Good morning. Thank you for attending the session. My name is Fernando Valera. I'll be speaking about how to implement AI in the VMV lifecycle and accelerating compliance as well. So before we start, I would like to hear a little bit about the industries you might be in. Anybody in aerospace from the audience? No aerospace, automotive. There you go. Medical devices, controllers, energy, exhibitors. There you go. Competitors. Just kidding. All right. Well, the agenda for today is to talk a little bit about the regulated industries and the embedded development in those. And we will take a look at AI in a very fundamental part in the development lifecycle, which is the VMV lifecycle and requirements engineering, right? So I would like to use Visure, of course, as an example of what AI can provide, but obviously it's just an example, you know, and I hope I can bring some ideas, whether you end up using Visure or anything else, even ChatGPT, whatever that is, right? And ultimately, we will also talk a little bit about the challenges of AI. I know that we all have AI exhaustion, you know, everything is AI and it's too much. But I would like to bring some of the experiences that we've had into this. It's not everything is magic, everything is perfect, and so on, right? So just one word about myself. I've been in the industry of requirements engineering for 20 years approximately, trained companies throughout the globe, IREP certified. So I hope to bring some of that experience today. And in terms of Visure, you will have seen us around. We are the guys that it's hard to miss. And we are the manufacturers of Visure, the ALM platform. And we have a stand there if you have any question after the session. So when we talk about embedded development, then in particular some of the industries that are regulated, like aerospace, it's crazy the overcost that some of the projects have. Like for instance, 50% of the projects have an overcost, whether it's in time or budget. We all know that. Looking at those numbers, sometimes like, it's way up. But the thing is that many of the issues are related to requirements engineering. So poorly written requirements, traceability that was not established properly at the beginning, and so on. But if we go to other industries, automotive, same thing, you know. And actually 70% of the software related issues stem from poor requirement practices. I mean, nothing new under the sun here. Same thing with medical devices. I can come up with hundreds of statistics that will basically reiterate the importance of requirements engineering in certified industries, right? So, just to make sure that we're talking about the same terminology here, and I'm going to use a V life cycle here, even though you can put, as we were talking earlier, you can put the V life cycle in whatever way you want. You can do W's, you can flip it upside down, say that you're doing agile, doesn't really matter. The steps are the same. Essentially, we're going to have several concepts that I would like to clarify. The concept of ALM, that it's a little bit foggy for a lot of people. Concept of PLM also. So just imagine as an example of a V life cycle. It doesn't have to be V life cycle, but just as an example, we might have the conception of the system where we describe the need. We can have the actual definition of what is it that we're going to do to solve that need. And obviously we'll need traceability. And then we will have to describe one way or the other the different parts that compose the actual system, right? Like software, hardware, mechanical pieces, etc., etc. So when we're talking about the software piece, we typically refer to ALM, so Application Lifecycle Management, right? And usually it encompasses the right-hand side of the V lifecycle. So everything that has to do with acceptance tests, integration tests, and so on, right? If we go down other paths, like hardware, mechanical, then we're talking about, PLM, et cetera, right? Just to make sure that we're all in the same page of the processes that we're going to cover. So how do we make sure that all this part is accelerated? Because the problem is that compliance, we all know it's really hard on resources. We have to spend almost 200% of what we would spend without having to certify it. So at some point it's like, oh man, I have to do it, but it's really expensive. So the topic for today was like, how can we use AI to accelerate this, right? So as I mentioned, within that V life cycle, if we focus on the requirements engineering process, we're going to find 4 main areas. The first one is going to be the elicitation, just gathering the information, right? Like in many cases, the elicitation phase is not done properly, and then we actually discover things during delivery to the customer. It's like, okay, you've got the system. It's like, oh, well, actually, that's not what we wanted. When we do Agile, we try to bring this forward to do those iterations faster, right? But essentially, this is the discovery phase. Documentation, making sure that everything that we thought we understood is actually written down, shared with everybody, approved, validated, etc. And then we give way to the validation and review, which is making sure that that validation, that approval, the review, peer review, whatever way we want to make sure that those requirements are correct, is documented and shared to everybody. And finally, managing that traceability to the origin, prioritization, what's the status of all that. And then we iterate because there were issues here, and then we go back and back and again and again. Eventually, we'll escape this life cycle. So, how can we expedite all this? Well, what we have been doing for the past year is finding ways in which AI can help us in these 4 areas. So, in the elicitation, and we will see some tips and tricks, but essentially what we've seen that is one of the most fundamental tips when deploying AI is going for the low-hanging fruit that is going to help us instead of trying to go for the full-blown 100% automation of everything. Why? Well, because we will talk about that in the challenges. AI is not going to get you 100% of the way. It's only going to get you like 60% of the way, right? And to get you to that 60%, it has to understand about your process. So what we're going to do is that we're going to get all the documentation that we have on the project. We're going to put it as a RAG, well, whatever that means. But essentially, we're going to attach it to the AI so that when it gives answers, it's going to give answers based on my project. So you have to integrate your requirements process with the LLM, right? Why? Well, because once we have the customer documents, we're going to start asking questions like, hey, I have this from the customer. Which standards do I have to comply with? They're like, well, DO 178, you have 61508, or this one or that one, risk management. They're like, oh, wow. So the scope is much larger than what we thought initially. You can also create a list of questions that you're going to ask the customer to clarify some aspects. You're going to find things like which topics should we drill deeper? Which areas are going to account for 80% of the cost in this project, right? Also, creating a list of stakeholders. So creating a list of stakeholders is something that takes like 20 minutes, even if it took an hour, it's a minimum. But I see many companies failing in that because, it's so obvious that, you just don't do it. And then we forget asking a stakeholder. So automate that. The glossary of terms, we all know it's a pain, so we always ask somebody like, hey, you don't look that busy, go for it. So why don't we automate that? It's simple. In 5 seconds, we can have already a very good glossary of terms. Move forward, documentation. So if we do this correctly, we will come up with a whole bunch of information that might not be properly structured. So we can use AI also to give it the structure that we want. We can put that, let's say, in the form of a proper outline of a documentation, like IEEE 130 or ISO 29148 or whatever, just basically purpose, scope, stakeholders, blah, 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 a template. But also it can write the requirements in the format we want it to write them. So user stories, if we want to use ears in COSI, whatever, like the system shall do this. So it can write very high quality requirements automatically. Again, we will talk about getting to the 60%, We will have to review them because some of them will be completely ridiculous, but we will get that 60% pretty nailed down. In this phase, we see things like ambiguities, we see things that are not well defined, and moving on to the validation and review, what we're asking is, how about missing requirements? Up until this point, we had a specification and that was our world. But now with AI, we can ask questions like, am I missing requirements? And the results are pretty promising because it typically says, well, you haven't even considered like security requirements or obsolescence or robustness. And actually, with your standard that you have to comply with, you should talk about that. It's like, oh, wow, nice. When we get a customer document, we're going to talk about ambiguities. We're going to talk about redundancies. We're going to talk about overlapping, contradicting requirements. We'll see some of that. But something that is also really interesting is that moving forward, we're going to be able to generate some additional artifacts. So what that means is that from the original set of requirements, we can generate test cases automatically. It's a whole world. Every organization does those differently, a different format, but it can definitely get you there, at least closer. So we can have at least, an initial set of test cases that we will refine, right? Or at least areas that we know that we have to think about when writing the test cases. And the other thing, it will create traceability automatically, right? Creating derived requirements. So we might have a high-level list of requirements from the customer, and we can get subsets and say, hey, just grab all the security requirements. Just write some software requirements that will fulfill these ones. Okay, boom. Again, it's to be taken with a grain of salt, but the key thing is that it's going to help us think about how we should do it. It's going to group those security requirements. We'll propose traceability. We'll say, oh, how about this one? Yeah, no, really it doesn't make sense. Oh, but this one, oh, yeah, absolutely. We didn't even think about this two that could be related. Sure, let's trace them, right? So all these activities that we're talking about here, they are extremely easy to implement with AI, because it's just we're not talking about imaging, we're not talking about simulations, it's just natural language processing, and that's what LLMs are really good at. Like just text, analyzing the text. Why not? And then we have the ongoing discussion about, it's just let this thing do the whole process, right? Well, several things that we will talk about later, but one of them is that the whole output is going to be as good as the person that is actually asking the questions in the prompt of the AI, right? So it will highly depend on a user. So the quintessential quote, like crap in, crap out, still applies. The only thing is that we might get automatic crap out very fast, and it's going to look fantastic. So we have to be careful of that. My take on this is that it's going to be pretty much like laptops, right? Moving from typewriters. I mean, every single one of us is going to be expected to be at least a 50 or 100% more efficient. And that's it. And companies that are not doing this will just fall behind. It's going to become a utility, right? So I would like to spend like 2 minutes walking you through a couple of things. We have like 5 minutes approximately, and then I'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So this is Visure, and again, this is just an example. You want to use ChatGPT, upload your document, feel free to do that. What we've done is that we've embedded an LLM so that it reads the documents from Visure, and you can safely apply the AI to this step. So for instance, just very quickly, going through Visure, these are obviously dashboards where you can see like the progress of the project in terms of requirements, in terms of test cases, risk management, etc. But essentially, Visure provides like a whole area of documentation for your requirements, your test cases, risk management, whatever you need, right? And in here, for instance, I've got an airbag specification. This airbag specification, if the Wi-Fi allows, it's just, for instance, this one was generated 100% with AI. My knowledge on airbags is very limited. So essentially what we can do is within our document, and based on what we plug this into, so it could be our own internal LLM, it could be OpenAI services, Bedrock, whatever you want to do, Copilot, we can generate requirements, we can generate risks, we can generate the test cases, entire specification templates, analyzing requirements, or even generating diagrams. So we can say, hey, I want to come up with the state diagram for my lithium battery for an electric vehicle. All the different states, it will come up. Interesting thing about this is that we no longer need to start moving things around. We can say, add another state here, and it will recreate it, right? Let's do an example here. So basically, crossing the fingers, let's see what happens. But I just asked it to generate a specification for an airbag for an electric vehicle. I could have come up with a better example, but my imagination at this point of the event is just out the window. So what it's doing is that it's gathering like data on airbags for electric vehicles and putting it in the shape of a document with the correct, purpose, scope, stakeholders, etc., etc. So let's see. Again, crossing fingers here. And then the interesting thing is that, or the way our customers are using this, is that they're generating a initial set of requirements. Then they are drilling into lower level requirements by generating requirements for each area. So, okay, now give me requirements for security. Now give me requirements for robustness. And what about, cybersecurity? Or create risks for this type of cybersecurity. So here you generated the purpose, the scope, crash airbag control unit, the stakeholders. So vehicle manufacturer, obviously, restraint system supplier, regulatory authorities, it's exactly a whole bunch of standards and references, glossaries of terms, and then an initial set of functional requirements. So crash detection and decision, deployment timing, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into the detail of all of them, but essentially, at this point, we can select what is it that makes sense and is useful, and then we get it into our specification. Perhaps half of it doesn't make sense or is obsolete, because again, this is not going to innovate and create something that does not exist. It will always be based on something that already exists, right? And then moving forward, what we're going to do is that we're going to use our assistant here to basically ask whatever questions we want on the information that we have in the database. So for instance, tell me about this function. Are we covering it? Is it complete? How do these two functions relate? And then in here, in this example, I just asked something as naive as, are there low quality aspects in this document? And it roasted me. So basically it's saying, well, there are critical issues. So, this predefined thresholds, not verifiable. Whatever you wrote is crap. In this case, within 30 milliseconds, what's the problem? It's duplicate or near duplicate requirements. There are conflicting requirements. One says 30 milliseconds, another one says 50 milliseconds. Minor issues. And then a summary of recommendations of what we should do. Like, hey, correct your duplicates, figure out your stuff. There's plenty of things that you have to do here. And obviously, this is, again, going to be a 60%. There are more issues that may not have been highlighted here or some hallucinations. But it's getting a lot of stuff out of our plate in a matter of seconds, right? So we're getting close to the end. And I wanted to cover a couple of things that we have kind of run into over and over again in this process, and I would like to share with you. And those are the challenges. So the first one is the AI strategy that we're following. Not everything that says AI is useful, right? We have to be careful. And there was a study saying that 95% of the organizations got zero return on investment. Not because it's not useful, it's because it's expensive. Hosting your LLM and you do crazy stuff. However, we spend a lot of time seeing how this could be useful. Right? So if you're getting the tools that implement it the right way, I think you're going to be a lot more successful than trying to figure everything from scratch and reinvent the wheel, right? The second one is that AI is not magic, and I feel it's like a very, very advanced search on the internet, with all the good and bad stuff. And that has multiple implications. It's searching on things that already exist. So it's never going to give you the results of something that does not exist. So if the internet doesn't talk about military systems, actually I've tried it, give me the requirements for this military system. It gave me the requirements for systems from 15 years ago. Obviously, because newest information is not public out there. But you have to be aware of that, and the innovation has to come from each one of you. So let AI do the heavy lifting. That's 60%. Responsibility. Whoever is driving the AI is the responsible for that. A lot of it is fantastic. Some of it is absolute crap. You cannot just 100% rely on it. It's like, write the specification, yeah, go for it. It's going to be a disaster. Just make sure that everything is proper, that you're not missing gaps. The only thing is that at least you have to do a little bit less, Hopefully you have 60% done, and then you add your extra 2 cents on that. And finally, confidentiality. That's the biggest thing. Where is my data going? So you have to partner with someone that will walk you through those steps of where is my data going? Is it secure, or is it training an LLM? Can we use internal ones? Which ones work best? And so on. So this is something that you will have to address, each one of you. So we have full 2 minutes for a Q&A. So anybody has any question? Yeah, please.
So one of the challenge of AI is debugging. So if one of the challenge of AI generated code is debugging. I trace the path solved. I would like to hear how these traceability phase of how we.
Thank you. So we face the same issues ourselves, and I was reading a study that said that AI, the more senior you are, the less it helps, to the point that for the most senior developers, AI slows you down because it creates bugs, and then figuring those out, it takes you more than if you had done it from the beginning manually yourself, right? So I think that we can implement the same steps that we saw earlier for the AI, but for the code generation, code reviews. That's the low-hanging fruit, right? Obviously getting the requirements right, generating the high-level structure of the code so that it makes sense, or creating the state flows out of the source code automatically. So instead of having it do the whole thing from beginning to end without understanding what's happening in there, you can try to automate smaller steps in the process. That's exactly. Thank you. Any other question? Perfectly on time. Anyway, if you have questions, would like to know more about Visure, the product, AR support, or some hats and stress balls, we're there, booth 8056. 8056. And thank you all for attending. Thank you so much.